GunninGamerz here. We're back for our second video on the A2A L049 Constellation, or Connie as she's better known. We're going to be taking off with this bird today and getting it in the air, so stay tuned. Hopefully by now you've already seen our part one. If not, I would encourage you to go back and watch that video. And the next step would be, hopefully you've already got the checklist that we're going through today that we made here down in the description. You've got that downloaded or in front of you so that you can follow us along. Now this part two will consist of the flight. I'm not going to go to full like normal cruise altitude just based on time. I want to keep this a little shorter. So we're just going to climb to a few thousand feet, kind of simulate our cruise, and then we'll be coming in and doing our descent and landing, and we'll do our shutdown checklist. All right, make sure that you subscribe, hit that notification, and like this video. Let us know in the comments what you thought of the other one, and if you have any questions about what we're doing with this one. Also, you can catch us all throughout the week flying over on twitch.tv/GunninGamerz, so check out all those links down below. Just a quick disclaimer, I am not a real-life pilot. I don't own one of these aircraft in real life. If you are here looking for real-life stuff, real-life piloting, what the heck are you doing here? Thanks for stopping by, though. I definitely appreciate it and quite humbled by that. Well, all I fly is a desk, but I try to do my best at flying my desk the very best that I can. So we're going to go ahead and get taken off here. Now, normally I don't sit out in the runway and idle around, but again, this is a tutorial, so we're going to start in with our takeoff, which is to hold the brakes, and you heard my parking brake come off there. Normally you wouldn't have that on when you taxi right out here. So we're going to hold the brakes. We're going to go up to 46 on the manifold pressure and 2,800 RPM. And then you're just going to gently let off those brakes. And we're pretty light today. We don't have any people or property on here. I haven't flown this thing in quite a while, so hopefully I don't make a goof of myself. Not too much wind today.
80.
Turn on my head tracking. Gradually give her some more here.
100. Rotate.
At 80 is when you can rotate. I usually wait till 100. Don't want to force it up here. We're pretty light today. Once you get to the end of any reusable runway, you can hit those brakes and get the gear up. And then we're also going to go up with the flaps. Start trimming.
Flaps up.
There we go. We're going to start trimming out. So climb power is going to be 32, and we're going to bring those RPMs down to 23. I got to check my notes there. Yes, 23. I was going off of my memory there. Bring that on down and get yourself trimmed out to do a nice little climb. Again, we're so empty that normally I climb at a rate of 1,000. We were just at 1,500. That can be found right here. We're at 1,500, and honestly, we're so light, this thing wasn't having any problems. I will tell you that at a rate of 1,000, if you're very heavy, don't do that for very long and really watch those air speeds, because at a rate of 1,000, you'll only be able to do it for so much time. And there's really not a reason you're not having to get up to cruising altitude that fast anyway, so maybe set to 500 and even 300 if you're super heavy and the air is not too thick. So it's pretty cool out today, so climbing pretty nicely. And I'm gonna only climb up to 4,500 and maybe even 3,500. We're not having to worry about obstacles here in Wisconsin. I just want to stay below the clouds for this little tutorial simulated flight.
Autopilot on.
I'm gonna flip my autopilot on, and you can run the, I think it's shift 6. You can run autopilot in here if you'd like. I have all this on my Logitech panel. We're gonna get navigation set, and you can do all this in shift 6. You can hit your navigate. Okay, we're gonna just set to 4500 here for the moment, and we're pretty much right there. I know this is not the most beautiful flying here, but I want to focus on some of the steps here, and I want to keep this as short as possible. So again, I don't want to climb too high here, but you want to stay at 32 and 2300 RPM on your climb. Once you're in your climb, you can also turn off your fuel pumps, which I do, but remember, your engineer is in control of that, so whatever they're doing back there is great. Just know that I do still flip that off. It's in the checklist. During the cruise, you can also turn off your nose light and your landing lights. Now, there's been a lot of folks that have argued in my Twitch chat over the years about whether they're supposed to stay on the landing lights to 10,000 feet or you should shut them off as soon as you take off. They do retract out of the wings, and I tend to shut them off right away once I take off there. However you do it is how you do it. In the simulator, you're not going to hurt nothing. I promise you that. And again, once you get up above 10,000 feet, you can let your people out of the seat again. We're just simulating that we're up over 10,000 feet, so you can let them out of their seats, and you can also, I guess, let them light their cigarettes up, which is again kind of bizarre, but back in the day that was a thing. And normally you're going to be flying this thing between 18, 23, 24,000 feet, something like that. Again, once you climb up over 13,000, he is going to tell you that you need to throttle down to engage the superchargers. We're going to go ahead and take him off of the superchargers for a minute. So at 13,000, he'll tell you to throttle down, and the reason behind that is if you don't throttle down, you will likely end up you know, really torquing things a bit too much. So we're going to throttle down and just kind of simulate that. And then you can see everything is going to shoot up with your manifold pressure. Adjust your throttle accordingly to wherever you're supposed to be at for your climb. Again, 32 on the manifold, 2300 on the RPM. I need to come back on those just a little bit there. And that'll be done again, 13,000 feet, and he'll let you know about that. We're going to go ahead and put the engineer back in charge, so he'll probably shut the superchargers off. Yeah, there he shuts them off. All right, and so then once you get above, of course, 18,000, you want to set your altimeter to 299 as you do with any aircraft. And again, that's a very simple thing to do right over here. Just make that adjustment, 299 And that's pretty much it. Now you'd be in a nice cruise setting, which we're going to get up to here and adjust after he turned off the supercharger. So a cruise setting would be, in step 1 of the cruise would be setting the 29 and 22. Now I can't emphasize enough to newer pilots that sometimes I fly with people who are brand new to flight sim, and they have this idea that, you know, I'm in a hurry, I want to keep my RPMs up. The Connie, being that it has 4 very large propellers, is a great aircraft to learn a very valuable lesson. And that lesson is you want to get those RPMs back, because imagine those propellers at a higher RPM are like plows going through the air. I mean, they're more flat, they're actually causing a lot of resistance. So you can study this up, and there's YouTube videos on this, but in general, you want to get that down to 22, even 21 I fly a lot of times, and over a long period of time, you will actually see your ground speed going up by doing that. So if you have the GTN, or if you use a program like Little Nav Map, it's kind of fun to actually play around with your RPM, you know, run it up there around that 23, right up around that yellow line. And you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. That this is, again, not a great example here because the plane is still getting settled in, but you'll actually see your ground speed and your overall airspeed drop sometimes. So make sure that you're flying efficiently. Again, I'm emphasizing this because I've flown with many new people, many new desk pilots, and this is something I see them messing up and forgetting to do. So get yourself down around that 22 and 29 on the manifold pressure, and it really makes a very, very much quieter and much nicer, smooth flight. And then the only other thing you're going to want to do is step 3. Of course, oh, and your mixtures, I forgot about that again. Your flight engineer is back here taking care of mixtures. He's going to do what he's got to do. He's already in cruise lean right now. But yeah, he's already got that all taken care of, so we don't have to worry about the step 2. And the only other thing you're going to want to be aware of is every 15 minutes, you know, be checking your drift here. And we want to go ahead and make a little slight adjustment there. And you can pretty much sit back and fly this thing all the way over the Atlantic Ocean or from California to Hawaii. I mean, this thing's got the range to do it. It's why it's one of my favorite aircraft from A2A to fly. It's just really a nice plane. I won't lie, I've done some Atlantic flights. I went from Wisconsin all the way to the UK one time, and I did it while I went to sleep. You know, you can set for emergencies by hitting shift 9. Nope, that's not right. That's the captain of the ship. Shift 0 or shift 8 or something like that. Shift 3. You want to hit the AFK option there. And then that's going to come up and you can set your emergency, your altitude, you know, basically make all of those different adjustments right there as far as, like, I usually turn on emergency. I'll usually set altitude to pause 2,000 feet below where I want it to be, so that if I, for whatever reason, start dropping out of the air, that it pauses the sim pretty quickly thereafter. You definitely want to give yourself a little room there, because if you're doing it too close, as your outside air pressure changes, if you have it set way too close, you could be flying along and there's no problem. It's just going to trip it because, again, you haven't been in the plane setting this. And I could be wrong on that, but it's been a long time since I've done this, so just going back, little note, I usually do 2,000 feet under from where I want. You can also do time. I've done that before when I know that I'm not going to be back at the PC before I get to my destination. And you can also set by distance, which is also a little more surefire way to make sure that you stop short. If you wanted to finish up, maybe you got to go to work or go to sleep, or you're heading to town. Those are all very nice features and something I don't think we should beat ourselves up for using. I know it's nice to sit in the seat, and I've done the long 15-hour flights on Twitch. Just did one very recently. I've done several over the years, so I have nothing to prove that I can't sit in this chair for all those hours and fly. A2A just really gives us such a nice ability to have that all managed for us. And just a little note, going back to our checking your altimeter every 15, obviously that's only if you're under 18,000 feet, as I am right now. If you are above that, leave it at 2992. We're just going to cruise on back towards the airport here and come in for a landing. Now, I'm not going to have a lot of time to set up for this landing. We're not very high up and I'm not very far away, but normally I like to run a nice RNAV approach. If you're doing ILS, if you're doing more old school stuff, you've got all those gadgets here. I'm not going to cover that on this, but you can practice all these things and just give yourself time. This thing's not a GA plane. It's not gonna, well, it will fall out of the sky, but you're gonna want to give yourself time to get things set up for your approach. And again, that's gonna be a little bit of a challenge for me today, but we're gonna try to make it happen. Another thing I was just going through my checklist here and I kind of messed up on was the number 4 in the climb. Again, because I'm not actually climbing, I'm kind of out of order here, but you want to turn on your passing light once you shut off your nose light after 10,000 feet. So basically what that will look like on the outside of your plane is the nose light will go out, that's a white light, and your red passing light will come on. So again, follow the checklist. I'm just kind of briefly running through this for the sake of going through it with you guys and to kind of point out where different things are. You'll always want to follow your checklist, and if you're not going up to 18,000 feet, don't pretend that you are like I am, because you'll get yourself all mixed up. But we're just flying back. We got to be a little bit careful here because we are in some icing conditions. If you end up having issues with that, all your de-icing switches are over here. All right, as we come into our turn here, I want you to really focus on these gauges up here because that's what's really going to be going on here. Now, I'm kind of going awfully fast right now. We had to kind of descend a little quick, and I'm really light. So we're going to get the power down a little bit lower for a second than what we ought to be at. But you want to be at, you get on final, you really want to get on your numbers here because this thing will give you a hard time trying to get her down on the ground safely. But you want to drop down from the 29 down to the 20. The same thing is going to go, you're going to want to watch those RPMs. We want to go down to 2,000 on the RPM. Now just one of the things to remember too is the propellers act as a drag. They'll actually help you, so later on when you're coming in on short final, you're going to be up to 2,400 RPM. They'll actually help you slow down, so don't forget to move those up. All right, you want to also try to remember not to use your flaps as speed brakes. So make sure you're slowing yourself down. Your gear is going to really help you get down as well. Now that we're down within low enough speed to get those gear down, we're going to go ahead and get those things down.
Fuel pumps on.
Drop one more flap. Everything is coming at me so fast here. It's hard making a tutorial and trying to fly this plane at the same time. So I've got my manifold pressure down a lot lower than I'd like it to be, but we just came up so fast. Normally I have a lot more time to prepare for all this. Give yourself lots of time with this aircraft. So with the gear coming down, you're going to also want to get on your landing lights.
Flaps down.
All right, we got our last notch of flaps there. I've got all the speeds listed right now in the checklist to kind of help you out. The 172 is the first the first set of flaps. 10 degrees 20 would be at 120, and the final is at 100. Still up a little bit high, but this is again the lack of being able to kind of prepare for this ahead of time. You want to make sure you got 3 green lights over here that let you know your gear is down. We're going to bring those RPMs up to 2,400. Really important to trim yourself out. If you're pulling on the yoke a whole lot during this process, you're really going to fight this airplane to get it on the ground. But try to make sure that you're properly trimmed out. I've got a little bit of wind that I'm dealing with here, and we're getting 4 whites, but 4 whites are better than 4 red. And I am empty, so I'm not too worried about getting down where I need to be. Something else you'll want to make sure is that your fuel pumps are on. Again, your engineer will do that. And that your mixture is set to auto rich, which again, your engineer will be doing that for you as well. I'm not too hopeful
500 feet.
that I'll have a really good landing here, but we'll see. I haven't done this in a little while, and got my speeds down quite a bit here, so we're gonna pick those up just a tad bit. At 20 feet is when you're about to touch. So get ready.
100 feet. 50, 40, 30, 20.
Kind of flare, cut the
10.
throttles.
Setting cow flaps.
And set the nose down. Definitely not my best landing, but for the sake of the tutorial and all the distractions, it wasn't too bad. You can beat me up in the comments, I guess. Like I said, I can't stress enough, give yourself time. Unless if it's an emergency, do not plan on just dropping this thing out of the sky and throwing it on the ground, because it it'll definitely kick your tail. It's not hard to get down. It's one of the easiest airplanes, especially flying through bad weather. I've flown through where I couldn't even see the ground until 500 feet AGL, and I still had a great landing. You just gotta give yourself time. The flaps are gonna be up
Flaps up.
as soon as you land. Give yourself time. I haven't flown this thing in several months, so I won't beat myself up too bad for that approach, but again, everything coming at you quick, it'll make you work. Once you get off the runway there, you're gonna wanna go ahead, again, make sure your flaps are up. We've already done that. Cowl flaps are open. I still let my engineer work during this time. I'm not gonna like take over at this point. He's okay doing that because we're about to shut down anyway, so there's not a lot that he could mess up. And I'm not saying he messes things up, it's just I'm real picky. So cowl flaps number 2 he does, supercharger inlets number 3 he does that. Upon runway exit, strobe light is going to be off. You're going to turn off your pitot. Again, I've got switches for this on my Logitech. All that stuff is over here. Pitot heat and all that. You're also going to set your transponder to ground over here. For me, it's on the GTN. And I already covered number 7 pitot heat and ground blower, which is in the back there again. That's engineer's area. He's gonna go ahead and set that ground blower. So we can go ahead and taxi back to our parking spot. And now you get to enjoy those very squeaky, or I don't know what you want to call those brakes, but it's really actually pretty nice. We're gonna go up and park at the ramp today. I'm kind of hungry. And there's a great restaurant here called Hangar 54. And I'm talking, of course, real life here. That's right up at the Chippewa Valley Airport. Me and the family go there and eat sometimes. And this is Orbix scenery, but it's not like an Orbix payware airport. It's just one that they kind of put the buildings in the right place. In real life, right in front of us is where the restaurant is. I didn't do the best job parking there, but we'll just pull up there and get the parking brake on. Now be careful if you are given throttle. In my part 1, we actually took off skidding. Sometimes in the winter with this aircraft, you'll get that. Yeah, see, we got parking brake and it's wanting to move. So you shouldn't have to do anything like that other than if you're trying to clear your plugs. But just be aware of that with this airplane is even when the parking brakes are on in the winter, or maybe when it's wet, it'll start sliding. Okay, now we're gonna jump through the shutdown sequence, and this is slightly more important, not anywhere as important as startup, but a little bit of things going on here, especially in colder weather. So I'll briefly cover those. The first thing is gonna be set your parking brake, which again is down there. Now the passenger signs, I just realized when I landed, I didn't shut them off because we kind of rushed ourselves through all that stuff when we were coming down. I had a lot coming at me, so normally the passenger signs would be on. Again, give yourself time. Passenger signs would be on for them to be seated and belted in and no smoking. So you can go ahead and shut those off and let them get out of their seats. You're going to also turn off at this point the flight engineer. And make sure you do that, because if you don't, you're going to be trying to shut things down properly and he's going to be still turning things back on, and it just gets really confusing. And so I would highly recommend, and that's why we put that in our checklist, turn off the engineer. The nose light will be the next thing that you can turn off. I've got switches for all this stuff. And I forgot to turn off my landing lights there too. Get the landing lights off when you leave the runway. We've got the nav lights, all of our nose lights and taxi lights, tail lights, all that stuff's going off. Windshield heat, we can go ahead and turn that off as well. Mixture is going to be idle cutoff. Again, if you have the engineer still on, he might not let you do this. But go ahead and kill those beautiful engines. And then we're left with the magnetos, which are up here. I have a switch, so we'll turn all those off, and the master ignition switch. And then the last thing here, one of the last things, is the avionics can go off. And now we want to move to the engineer station. and we're going to turn off the auxiliary fuel pumps, which he already had those off, so I just switched them off on my panel here. Generators are going to be off. We've got those off. Hull flaps are going to be closed next. And depending on, again, weather and things, he might have those halfway, all the way, but just run them all the way down. And right there is where you're going to see that happening. So hull flaps are closed, number 14. Payload manager. Now this is the time that it's safe to let out your passengers, so go ahead and click the unload, let them out, and then they'll start departing the aircraft while you're finishing up the rest of your stuff. You've also got to turn off the ground blower once they're all out. You want to keep everything fairly warm for them, but get that off. Ground blower, heater, AC, and the master switch there, you all want to get that turned off. So master, that's number 18, the air conditioning master. I'm kind of jumping around because I a lot of times don't use the checklist on shutdown because, I don't know, I fly through it. But the last thing is going to be the battery switch, and that's going to be up here. And then lastly is your beacon, which is, we get up in the pilot's seat here, or right there. Beacon is going to go off last for safety. Now, the one thing I did not cover in this tutorial is the oil dilution. We have that checklist, and it's very, very easy. Just read it. Depending on how cold it is, if it's below 40 degrees, which I think is a 4 degrees Celsius, when, I guess it would be right about after step 6 in the shutdown, turn off your windshield heat, you can do all that. But before you cut the mixture, right, because cutting the mixture is going to shut the engines down. So before you cut the mixture, oh, and another thing that should be in there is, I guess, the cutoff. I don't know, maybe I ended up skipping that one. But jumping back to the dilution, you're going to, before you cut off the mixture and the engines are running, if you need to dilute, and that again is a process of injecting avgas into your oil, which thins it out, and you do that right before shutdown so that your oil is a little thinner when you start up in cold weather. Like if you're going to fly the next day, it's going to be cold. How that process works is the oil's thin because of the avgases mixed in there. As soon as it heats up to temperature and gets running, it burns that avgas off, and the oil is back to its regular viscosity and it's being thick and lubricating and all that. So it's kind of a very simple and ingenious way of diluting your oil and thinning it out for an easier start. So the way that you do that is, again, after step 7, you're going to read this, and I haven't done this in several years myself, but you're just going to idle it down until you get your temperatures down to the 40 degrees Celsius or 104 Fahrenheit. So don't do this when the engine's super hot, or you'll just burn off that avgas. But check your temperatures here, and you're going to just flip these switches on. My battery's off, so nothing's going to happen here, but you're going to flip those switches on. And you're going to, obviously it says to dilute at between 1,000 and 1,200 RPM, just so you can avoid, spark plug fouling. And you're going to just let it sit. So, and they also recommend a short acceleration period for about 10 seconds at the end of dilution, just to kind of clear the plugs, but you don't want to run it up too long and get it too warm because you'll start, burning off that avgas that you've put in your oil. So once everything is cooled down, enough to do this, you'll flip it on, and again, all that information's down below. All you gotta do is read. So between 4 and negative 12 Celsius or 10 Fahrenheit, it's 4 minutes. And if you get down, between 10 and negative 20 Fahrenheit, it's 6 minutes. If it's gonna be below negative 20 Fahrenheit, which it was here about 2 weeks ago, you're gonna run it for about 9 minutes. So don't run it too long because you don't want to thin it out too much, but run it 9 minutes. So, set a timer, however you do it. Once that time is up, you basically just trip these things off. And again, you might want to give her a 10-second, throttle her up a little bit, kind of clean those plugs out. Don't run it too long and get it too warm. You don't want to, burn off the avgas. And then go back to number 7, which is the mixture idle cutoff, and then continue on with your checklist. So it's a very simple process and something I don't do very often because I never fly in frequently enough in the cold weather. But when I do, sometimes I kind of purposely don't, because it's kind of fun to try to get the thing started, although I know it's not good for the engine. Fortunately, this is not real life, and I don't have to worry about the consequences of starting up with the oil not lubricating enough on startup. So however you want to do it, it's your bird, it's your A2A. Everybody's plane is completely different, and that is the absolute beauty of why we love flying these. And at the end of the flight, if you want to hit shift 7, you can do that and pull up the little deal here, kind of the checking in with the mechanic, kind of seeing how things are looking, and he'll tell you everything's going good. And if you have to overhaul something, you can pretty much do that there. Well, there you go. That was pretty much the full run through of kind of how to fly this plane. And I really hope that the checklist helps you. I know how much it's helped me. I wish I knew the original source that did the checklist and probably took it from the real manual, and they put something together, and then we had a guy work it back in 2017. And then again, this version was completely done up by Strike Eagle in our community, so huge shout out. And it was all of the stuff I wanted put in there. He basically made it look pretty. So this is what has worked for me, and I hope you find it very helpful. I know I kind of skipped a few things in the flight, and especially on the approach and all that. I missed a few things in the checklist because we were really hurried and we were coming up to the airport fast, but give yourself time and this plane will treat you right. And if you do make mistakes, that's all part of the fun in the sim. So I hope you really have fun learning. Again, make sure you join us in our Discord community. We've got a whole community that loves flying A2A as well as doing flight sim in general, so we'd love to see you over there. Make sure to join us over on our Twitch channel where we're flying throughout the week. You can catch some really great shows and come over and ask questions live, asking me anything. Even if I'm not in flight sim, I could be doing something else. Feel free to come in and bug me. I love talking about the A2A stuff. Don't forget to subscribe and like this video. Also, hit that notification button so that you get notified on the next video. I very much appreciate your time today, and thank you so much to the A2A group for all that they've done for our community. Until next time, take care.